Hi, Lou here to talk for a while about obscurity in game design. Sometimes obscurity is bad, sometimes it's good. I was being interviewed for a podcast, 5 Games for Doomsday, and the host Ben Maddox talked about games that were obscure when first played as though that was necessarily bad. But the real answer is it depends on why it feels obscure. Why might a game be obscure? Well, first, it might just be a poorly designed game, and it will always be obscure. Second, it might have lots of gameplay depth with, as is typical of gameplay depth, choices that you don't even reach, don't see until you've played the game several times. And the obscurity will disappear as you get better at the game, as you get deeper into it. But many tabletop games nowadays are transparent. That is, they're intended to reveal most of themselves in 1 or 2 plays so that you can play the game once or at most twice and think you know what to do and do fairly well. Of course, that's about all you ever get from most video games, at least the single player ones. It's not the same as dumbed down, but it's related. Commonly nowadays, I think tabletop games are made to be played 1 to 3 times only, because that's the typical MO of people playing games now. They want to explore games rather than master games, and they don't want to play a game more than 1 to 3 times to explore it, to find out what's there before they move on to the next game. Now, there's not going to be much gameplay depth to the game because most people won't get that far to experience that depth. And in fact, if the game is deep, people might reject it because when they play the first time, they just don't get it. Now, in the past, family games have always been transparent, and party games even more so, given the way they tend to be learned at a party and played just that one time. But hobby games in the past often had enough depth, gameplay depth again, that they could be called obscure. Nowadays, hobby gaming has expanded to include many party-style and otherwise casual games with little depth. So you could say it's broad as a river and shallow as a mud puddle. Here's an example of a deep game, my own game Britannia. Countless players have tried it once, not understood much of what was going on in the gameplay. They understood the rules because the rules are actually pretty simple, and declared it unbalanced or obscure. I remember one young fellow who played as yellow, and when he got done he said, I don't see what I could have done any better, and he lost badly. And then the experienced players started to tell him all the things he could have done that he just didn't think of, didn't see, didn't dig out. Now, some people have played this game more than 500 times. Why would anyone play any game more than 500 times, especially one that's 4 to 5 hours long, as Britannia is? Either there's an awful lot of depth in the gameplay to discover, or it's an easy time killer like party games. Cards Against Humanity, that kind of thing. Now, to go back to the bad kind of obscurity, it could be poorly written rules. It could be elements that should have been taken out of the game because they just get in the way. It could be lack of harmony, which I've talked about in other screencasts. The rules just don't fit right. They don't feel right. It could be a disconnect between the theme and the actual play, or it could just be an unpolished, weak design. Now, I've tried to say gameplay depth here. There are other kinds of depth, such as story depth or puzzle depth, but obscure is usually related to playing the game, not to something else. And once again, it's not related to how complex or simple the game is, as long as the rules are clear. Unfortunately, too many players nowadays don't understand the different kinds of obscure. Deep games are not popular today because they don't fit the notion of the explorer who plays a couple times and moves on. Thanks for listening.